So, how do we make chords and chord progressions sound like jazz, or for lack of better terms, jazzy? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to be covering in today's video. 4 levels of making chords sound like jazz. That's coming right up. What's up, Brent here from LearnJazzStandards.com, which is a blog, a podcast, and videos all geared towards helping you become a better jazz musician. Make sure you subscribe at the button below, hit the bell notification button to never get left out of what is going on here on the channel. So we want to make chords sound more like jazz. Maybe you're someone who is not a jazz musician and you're kind of looking in from the outside going, how do I do that? Or maybe you are a jazz musician, but you're wondering what some more options are to really spice up the sounds and really, give it that jazz sound that you're looking for. So we're going to go over 4 levels. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go over level 1. So level 1 is essentially no jazz, right? But what we're going to do is we're going to take a chord progression that you will find often in jazz called the 1-6-2-5 chord progression. And we're going to do this in the key of G. Now, if you were a guitar player, you'll see some voicings that I'm using here. They're very simple voicings. If you're a piano player, you'll have no idea what these voicings are. If you're a trumpet player or a saxophone player, don't worry. The whole point is to know what options are available to you, not the exact voicings that I am playing, all right? So when it comes to triads, what would be a 1-6-2-5 in the key of G major? We have G major as the 1 chord. We have E minor as the 6 chord. We have A minor as the 2 chord. And of course, we have D major as the 5 chord. So the no jazz level 1 for a 1-6-2-5 is just simply triads. Right? And so that's where a lot of us are starting with, or if you're a guitar player like me, maybe you're playing power chords or whatever it happens to be, or if you're a piano player, right? Triads is really the starting place. So now what we want to figure out is how can we make this sound jazzy? Because this right here, well, it sounds great and it's all good, kind of doesn't have a lot of character to it, and it definitely doesn't have that character that, a lot of jazz musicians are playing. So let's start adding that with level 2. So level 2 is the starting point when it comes to making chords and chord progressions sound more like jazz, all right? And this is where we add 7th chords. 7th chords, by the way, are the default chords in jazz standards that are kind of just what all jazz musicians will assume or go to right away. Now, when we're talking about 7th chords, all we're doing is taking a triad, which is root, 3rd, and 5th, and we're adding the 7th on top. So now when we do that, we kind of get some different options on these chords in the 1-6-2-5. So now we'll have the 1 chord being G major 7, and now we'll have the 6th chord being E minor 7, the 2 chord being A minor 7, and then the important one here is the D being D7, the 5 chord being D7, a dominant 7th chord, however you want to voice that, back to the 1 again. So it sounds like this. Right? So already sounding a little bit jazzier just by simply taking those triads and making them into the 7th chords, which leads us to level 3. Now, level 3 is really where we can start opening up the doors here to many, many, many different possibilities, and it would be impossible for me to cover them all, so I'm just going to be going over some of them, and level 3 is extensions and alterations. Now, what are extensions and alterations? Well, an extension is basically adding other notes on top of the 7th chord. So, for example, an extension that you could do is add the 9th. Now, the 9th, so let's just do that to a G major 7th chord here. So we add the 9th to it, or I can do it an octave higher on my guitar here. That's the 9th. That is an extension, and it's the same as really thinking about it as the 2nd tone of the scale. So it would be the 2nd tone of the G major scale, which is, of course, A. So that's the 9th, or you could add a 13th on top of it, right? So we have different options depending on the quality of chords. So let's start going through the 1-6-2-5 with that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and start by playing a G major 13 for the 1 chord. And then for the 6th chord, I'm going to actually turn this into a dominant 7th chord. Now this is very important. You see this happen all the time in jazz. Instead of the 6th chord being a minor chord, which it normally is diatonically, we're going to turn it into a dominant 7th chord. But I'm also going to alter that dominant 7th chord and make it a sharp 9, right? So now we're adding some spice into the mix. Not only are we turning that minor 7th into a dominant 7th chord, we're adding a sharp 9. Now the cool thing about when you turn a 6th chord or any dominant 7th chord that's resolving to another diatonic chord like the 2 is it makes it sound like you're tonicizing that 2, making it kind of sound like a new 1 chord. So almost like the 6 is a 5 chord, a tension chord, resolving to that 2 chord. So it feels like a 5-1 relationship. So we call this secondary dominance. Don't worry if you don't know about that term or anything like that. Let's just focus right now on these options. So we have the G major 13 for the 1 chord, the E7 sharp 9 for the 6th chord. Now let's make this a minor 9. So we're adding the 9 on top here. And then let's also make the 5 chord a sharp 9. So now we have this. Okay, so lots of tension, lots of crunch, really getting jazzy. You ready? Let's try something else. Now let's make that 1 chord a 9 chord. Now let's make the 6th chord a flat 9, and let's make the 2 chord a minor 11th chord, and let's make the 5 chord a flat 9, dominant 7 flat 9 as well. So check this out. Right, so now we have a different sound there. Instead of the sharp 9, it's a flat 9, so totally different sound. Now let's try mixing and matching a little bit. So I'm going to do, let's do a G major 13 with a sharp 9 there for the 6th, and then a 9 for the 2 chord, and then a flat 9. All right, so we have. Let's switch that around a little bit. Flat 9, sharp 9, flat 9, flat 9 again. So we can start creating different sounds by just knowing what options we have available to us. Now we can take things a little bit further with the extensions and alterations and add more on top of them. So what we're going to do now is take all the dominant 7th chords and make them altered chords. Now, when we have altered chords, that means we're adding a bunch of altered extensions, really as many as we want on top of the chord. In this particular case, I'm going to show us playing the flat 13 and the sharp 9 on top of those dominant 7th chords. So it's going to sound like this. So lots of tension. I'll play this in a different position on the guitar here. Right, so this is really coming from this altered scale thing, so right to that tense. Right, and that's kind of the sound we're going for. So that's level 3, alterations and extensions. Plenty more where that came from. Now, level 4 is where we can add even more jazz to this chord progression, if you will. And this is where we introduce substitutions to the chord progression. So a little bit more on the chord progression side rather than the actual chord side. Now, there's so many options that we could choose from. I'm only going to go over 2 common ones that you will see come up time and time again. Number 1 is passing diminished chords. So if we have this chord progression, we're going to replace the 6th chord, the dominant 6th chord, with a sharp 1 passing diminished chord, okay? So basically, we have a G major 7, a G sharp diminished 7, and then the 2 chord and the 5 chord. So this sharp 1 diminished replaces essentially a flat 9 dominant 7 on the E. So an E7 flat 9 is really the same pretty much as a G sharp diminished 7, because diminished chords are symmetrical. All right, so that's the most basic one we can do, that passing diminished instead of going to the 6th chord. Now, another really common substitution is tritone substitutions. Now, tritone substitution is simply when you are replacing one chord, not always a dominant chord, but often a dominant 7th chord, and you're replacing it with another dominant 7th chord a tritone away. Now, a tritone, that's the sound of that. You can think of it as the sharp 4, the flat 5 interval. So we're replacing a chord with the root a tritone interval away. So let's do a classic example here. This one is going to be 1, 6, 2, flat 2 with a dominant 7th chord to a G major 7th. So that A flat 7 there, that's replacing the D7, the 5 chord. Why is that? A flat is a tritone away, so it's now that's pretty jazzy, right? So one more tritone substitution for an example. Let's do a tritone sub of 6 and a tritone sub of 2. So we have G major 7th, and then we have B flat 7. So we're replacing the E7 tritone away with a B flat 7, then A minor 7 and A flat 7 to G. So now it sounds like this. Right? So that is tritone substitution. That's level 4 substitutions with the chord progressions. All right, so I hope that gave you some options to get started with and to think about and start practicing. What I want to know from you in the comments is, what other ways do you make jazz chords and chord progressions more jazzy, or to make them more colorful and spiced up? I would love for you to fill the comment section down below with as many different ideas as you possibly have. All right, well, I have another video that you might want to check out kind of along these lines, and that is some different substitutions that you can use. I've already covered a few, but there's some more in this video, so check out that video on the screen right now. Would love for you to go on further. Make sure you like this video, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.